Well,
Yeah.
Rob, how did you guys get together? I mean, how did the band form and all that stuff? Give us a brief history.
Well, I grew up in Aberdeen. Well, as a teenager, I was in Aberdeen and I was in a band there. And then I went down to London, as you kind of did in that era. Struggled around for a few years, released a single and did a few things. At one stage, I was the engineer for the Pretenders.
Oh,
I
wow.
engineered their demo of Don't Get Me Wrong,
Yeah.
that one. So I did all that kind of stuff. And then the people that were managing me managed a band called the Flock of Seagulls, who actually did some really good business in America at the time.
Yeah. And still
They-
living off some of that business.
Yeah. They sort of split up, and I went back off to Liverpool with the bass player and guitarist Paul Reynolds, who was a great guitarist, and Liverpool was where I'd been born. Fair enough. Yeah, so we were in Liverpool with this band. That kind of split up, and then I started to do solo gigs and did a lot of that, singer-songwriter kind of vibe, really. And then after a while of that, I kind of got the hankering of, your first sort of school band when you've got all your mates and you're like cranking up the guitars and playing at whatever the school dance. Began to miss that sort of side of it, really. So I looked around for a couple of people to start playing electric guitar with, really. That's how it started. I just wanted to play electric guitar again. So I found a drummer called Peppy Who Knows, interesting name, and a bass player called GP Chesters, who was actually a drummer, but he wanted to play bass. So yeah, I was more used to doing acoustic stuff, so I had to learn to get used to sort of playing electric again. We had a drummer who was trying to be a bass player, so it was like we were all kind of learning a bit together. So the early stuff that we did was all recorded live in my garage. There was quite a lot of energy to it. It had that same sort of feeling, really, when you're just sort of not sure what you can do and what you can't, and it's pleasant kind of sensation to find out that you can do something.
Yeah.
So we sort of started off from there, and then we've carried on. Basically, we do the essential backing tracks live, then maybe add a couple of little bits later on. That's what it is. It truly is garage rock. It's recorded in a garage. It's
That's
kind of
perfect.
rough and ready, as per the 60s. We sort of studied a bit the Glyn Johns drum method, where when we started off with just 2 mics on the drums, and we gravitated to 4 mics on the drums. We've got that. All the lead vocals are all done live. Sometimes sort of double track them, and we add a few bits later. We have a producer called Fran who is really involved in all of this. So pretty much anything that we record, we sort of run by him first, really. So if I've got an idea for a song, I sort of tend to go around to his, and we just sort of chew it over a bit and work out the structure, just so that we're then clear that he's going to be happy with it, rather than us going the extent of recording it and blowing our first take on something that he's going to say, well, that's not, you need to change this and that.
Right.
So there's a bit of preparation that goes into it, but basically it's just good old fashioned live stuff, because that's what I like, having been around in that kind of era. Yeah, I like that approach to it, really. And
Rob, I'm with
years-
you very much. Do you record? Are you recording digitally, or you have go to tape, or what do you guys do?
Yeah, we use the computer like a tape machine, so it's sort of we just switch it on.
Yeah.
Switch it on for half an hour, and then every half an hour check that it's still on. Of course, occasionally it isn't, and you're blowing your best work, but most of the time, fortunately, most of the time it is. That's all it is. So I just sort of set up the session a bit like like an engineer would. And then we just press play and go. That's it, really. I mean, we do a lot of editing afterwards, or sometimes we do a lot of editing. Things really that you're not meant to do. Different takes, all kinds of different things that we've done that theoretically you shouldn't. And if you listen very, very carefully, I'm sure you can hear them. I suppose if you don't listen too carefully, we might be able to get away with them. But yeah, we do a lot of editing after the fact, but before the fact, it's all pretty basic. It's live.
Well, Rob, you guys capture that magic. I mean, for some reason, to me, live, you guys just capture that magic.
Well, it makes sense to me that if that's what you're trying to do, that you pay some attention to how you're meant to do it. You know, as we all know, recordings back in the day were pretty quick. They'd book a session, the band was either rehearsed or not. I suppose Rolling Stones, after a while, they got to a stage where they didn't really cobbled it all together in the studio, didn't they? But a lot of this stuff, I mean, Shell Talmy, is that how you
Shel
pronounce
Talmy,
it?
produced the
The
Who.
old Pink stuff. I mean, that stuff sounds pretty pre-planned to me. I mean, they certainly kind of knew what they were doing, what song they were going to do, and how they were going to do it in advance. I don't know if we're quite as evolved as that. But yeah, it makes sense if that's what you're trying to achieve, to do it in that way. So in other words, it wouldn't make a lot of kind of sense to me to start off with a click track and right, you do your bit, then I'll do mine. And that's not the way all that stuff was done, and it's not really the way to make it sound good, I don't think. And you can always hear when people have done it that way. And obviously you sacrifice something, because the kind of what we're giving our producer has got vocals all over the drums all over the vocals. It's but that a lot of people would sort of turn up and I can't work with that, you know, it's all the spill everywhere. But that's what it is. Yeah.
But see, for us, that's what we look for. Is we like to use the term authentic when it comes to looking for bands, and that is definitely an authentic 60s sound that you guys are putting out.
Well, later on, having done some of the Wooltones stuff, I then thought, okay, it'd be good to do, you know, there's all these sort of different things I like to do, but I liked to do some country stuff as well. So basically we recorded that, the same sort of setup, but I was playing acoustic guitar whilst the live drums were going on in a garage. So through doing that, I got onto Elliot Mazer, who unfortunately has recently died. Who produced Harvest and sort of a lot of Neil Young stuff back in the early 70s. That was done the same sort of way. You know, they had a better room to work with, but Neil Young was sat next to the drummer and the drummer was following him. To record that way with an acoustic guitar is quite an achievement, really. There's horrendous bleed going on the acoustic guitar track. So we did that, and when I sort of said to Elliot, got in touch with him, said, listen, we're trying to do what you did back in the day. The sort of correspondence we had ended up with me going over to Nashville to work with him in Nashville, which is a great experience for me. But that guy, I mean, he recorded the Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young 74 tour, Time Fades Away live. So he kind of wrote the book on live recording. So when I said to him, if I'm going to come to Nashville, I want to do it in the old way, you know, live. He said, yeah, fine. So it was a big attraction to working with him. And he was great. For a guy at the time who had kind of done it all, he was mixing Bob Dylan's Isle of Wight tapes and Janis Joplin stuff, apart from everything he'd done in the past. But for our sessions, I mean, he was lugging keyboard flight cases with me. We're driving around Nashville every day looking at the sites, and of course he knows Nashville like the back of his hand, because he ran Quadraphonic Studios where they recorded Harvest with David Briggs and Norbert Putnam. So it was great, but there was no element at all of, listen, I'm a producer of advanced years, I'm just going to do my bit. I mean, he was involved at the coalface with it, you know, which was great.
That's so great, Rob. That's so great, because he's a hero of mine too. I'm a big fan of all those records. You know, Neil Young is one of my go-tos, and I love all that stuff. And there's also, I think he was involved in a couple bands that I'm a big fan of. You may have heard of Area Code 615.
Yeah, well, that's how Neil Young got onto him, because it was so influential and people liked it at the time. And the drummer Kenny Buttrey was the guy who ended up playing on Harvest. And a dream of an acoustic guitar player called Teddy Irwin, who played the harmonics on Heart of Gold and ended up playing the bass on John Lennon's Happy Christmas War Is Over and loads of other stuff.
Oh, wow.
When I was with him, he was just getting some money from Led Zeppelin. You remember that song by Jake Holmes? Was it Communication Breakdown or whatever? Led Zeppelin had sort of modeled their songs.
Modeled, that's a nice term. Yeah, modeled.
Yeah, modeled. So they were still sort of splashing the cash for that then when we went to dinner with Teddy. But after sessions, for reasons I could never quite work out, he sent me 3 CDs of his guitar work, which I thought, that's nice of him. So one of them was called 3 Guitars, a Christmas Album. And I thought, well, he's a fantastic guitarist. He plays music it sounds like it's like come down from heaven or something. He's so sweet on the acoustic guitar. But I thought, well, 3 guitars, guitar Christmas. That doesn't really sound like. Anyway, put it on. It was absolutely gorgeous. Just the sound of 3 of him playing acoustic guitars.
Wow.
Amazing. But anyway, sadly, he died in November.
Oh gosh.
Um,
Elliot Major just died here in the past month. I think he just passed away in the past month.
Well, there's a radio DJ who asked, because I did one of the last sessions with Elliot. He said, "Can you give me what you did?" I said, "Yeah, fine." And I said, "By the way, there's nothing Elliot probably would like more than for you to play something by Teddy Irwin." And explained a bit about Teddy Irwin. And I said, to give you a bit more idea, I'll send you his obituary in the Tennessean, I think it was. So I sent the obituary, and I thought, well, I better just have a quick scan of it before. I'd read a couple of paragraphs and thought, yeah, this is all what I would expect. Heart of Gold, John Lennon, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I read the obituary all the way down. The last sentence was me. It says, Teddy Irwin's last session was with Rob Clarke.
Wow.
Absolutely astonished. I thought, God, how have I got in there?
Wow.
All the people have been mentioned
Incredible.
in the obituary. Yeah. Wow.
So when were you there, Rob? How long ago were you in Nashville?
Oh, 4 or 5 years ago. It was wonderful. On the last day, Elliot got us in to see the head of Warner's there, and we'd managed to finish 2 songs basically minutes before we were due to see them in Elliot's hotel room. We were mixing them on his laptop and his Gibson speakers. Gibson had actually given me an acoustic guitar for this session. He was well in with Gibson, basically. So I kept looking and watching that, and Elliot said, "Listen, I would rather not finish this song than go late to Warner's. You cannot go late to see the head of Warner's." So anyway, finally, we got it onto a CD. I didn't even know whether the CD would work. We got into the head of Warner's office, a guy called John Esposito, and his office was like a big pad, the set of Friends or something like that. Like that, except with all amps and guitars in it and a bit of office space. It was just a dream at the top of the building. You're like, oh God, you could live in here, no problem at all. So anyway, put the CD in, and I thought, oh, is this going to work? And thankfully it worked. And the first song, which was like a slow song called In My Dreams, like a bit of a Roy Orbison kind of thing. You look pretty bored while that was being played. And I thought, well, slow song ballad, could be struggling with this. And at the end of it, he got a bit emotional. Because I said, yeah, that song's kind of written about my dad. And I could see it start to well up. And he said, it's absolutely gorgeous. It reminds me of, I've forgotten who it was. The Cowboy Junkies is someone? Is that a band? Yeah. So it sounds a bit like that. It's absolutely gorgeous. I thought, my God, we're in with a chance of a record deal being on the head of Warner's. Because the second song was like a very sort of Bryan Adams-y, up-tempo, American anthemic kind of thing. So I thought it was bound to like this. And it was like he tapped his feet all the way through it. Good. Anyway, at the end of it, he says, no, I don't like that song. So I then drove back to the airport and we had to go home, basically. And then when I got home, because I was that tired, we nearly missed the flight because we had to wait for Elliot to meet this solicitor, the music business solicitor. And we only got on the flight. Really, they shouldn't have let us on. It was an absolute nightmare getting to the flight. Nashville Airport is the biggest airport on the planet. It's like a city, miles, and when I finally got home, I crashed out in front of the fire and woke up. And when I woke up, I thought, yeah, we got a deal from Warner Brothers, didn't we? I dreamt it. And it was only after a sort of couple of minutes of tuning back to real life, I thought, hang on a second, no, we didn't. We didn't get a deal from Warner. So yeah, I woke up from my dream kind of thing, really.
Yeah, still though, Rob, that's awesome. That is fantastic. I mean, another band, Barefoot Jerry. Have you heard of those guys?
I've heard the name. Yeah. Were
they're
they,
an awesome 615.
were they from that era as well? Or?
Yeah. Nashville. Yeah, they're all Nashville studio cats. And all
Right.
those guys, they played on Dylan's, Blonde on Blonde, and they played on
Yeah.
all
Well,
that.
Matt Gaden played on my session as well, who had written Everlasting Love, which was a big hit over here. I don't know if it was a
Yeah,
big
it was here too.
open up your arms.
Oh, yeah.
He wrote that and some other major hit, and he played on Blonde as well. So I was with Nashville Royalty. I mean, David Briggs,
That's amazing.
the keyboard player. There's a David Briggs who produced Neil Young. This is another David Briggs who owned Quadraphonic with Elliot. He'd played with Elvis, and they'd all played with like Glenn Campbell and Orbison and whatever. It's quite an amazing thing, really. And of course, they just assume that you're on the same level as them. There's no element of who are you. Yeah. It's just another session for them. So they treat you exactly the same as they treat any other of their clients.
That's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, because one of them said, yeah, I've done a lot of work with Steve Winwood. You know Steve? I said, well, yeah, Steve, yeah. He lives down in the Cotswolds, doesn't he? Yeah. That's it. But no, it was a good thing. But yeah, that's Nashville.
Well, though, Rob, you hear that in your music. I mean, not the Nashville sound, but that underlying and good rock and roll, though, really is, to me, it's blues, it's country, country and Western. There's a lot of Welsh stuff in there. To me, the basics are all there. So, I mean, I hear that in your music.
You've not been called Welsh before.
I mean, like those old Welsh mining songs, that they
Tom Jones. No. Yeah.
But
I think. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think our influences are sort of obvious in a way. Although I think we kind of look at it on a song by song basis. So we go from being influenced by one band to being influenced by another, or who knows, really. It changes every day, doesn't it, really, what sort of turns you on or what you're trying to do. Yeah, so there's that 60s vibe and that sort of Mersey thing and a bit of West Coast music, which I always, West Coast American, which I always loved. So yeah, there we go.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that depending upon which song it is, it's a whole different kind of, you can hear the country in this one and the psychedelic in this, and that's what makes it refreshing and fun to listen to, is that it's not just the same sound over and over again, and I think that's what makes you guys unique.
One reviewer said, this is the one that always sticks in my mind. He says, imagine Donovan writing for Cheap Trick, or vice versa.
Yeah,
that's a good.
That's a good term for it. Yeah.
Of the first album, that was a good description of it. I think, really. It's kind of evolved a bit since, but yeah, there's that kind of thing. I mean, we did a song about Adrian Henry, who's a famous poet in Liverpool. I don't know if he's very famous in America.
Who, Rob?
Adrian Henry is called. That was one of the tracks. He's sort of a bit like your beat poets, like Ginsberg and all them. To be honest, I would claim that he's maybe a bit better than some of them, but I mean, that might be a controversial statement, really. But
I forget the guy who was I don't know if he was from Liverpool or were just visiting back before the Fabs got big, and they backed him on stuff. He's the one that turned Lennon on how to snort the Vixen. Hey, what's the name of the poet? He told him about Polythene Pam, too. Gosh, I can't think. No, not ringing a bell. Sorry about that. Just a tangent.
You can edit that out anyway.
So, Rob, I have to ask now. You've played with the Quarrymen, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I live basically yards away from from where they met and from where they hung out. And there's a lot of stories in this village about John Lennon. When he was the bane of the local police's lives, kind of thing. So you're never far away from it. So yeah, there was a 60th anniversary in the same place that they met at St. Peter's Church. So we were booked to play for that. And of course, all the Quarrymen were there, and John Lennon's sister and various people had been involved in the Beatles legend. So we actually had Colin playing with us, and we recorded it as a bonus disc for our last, not this current album, but the one before, Big Night Out. It was like a bonus disc to accompany it. And we basically did the same sort of set that they did on the day, same equipment, which took created a few arguments, because for me, basically, I wanted to plug in the acoustic guitar and, I wanted to hear myself, basically. But the producer, Fran, insisted basically that nothing was plugged in, basically, other than the bass and his electric guitar. But basically, there was one vocal mic and that was it. And we recorded it onto a cassette deck. And it turned out really well.
Cool.
Because the producer got his way and they didn't listen to me, basically.
Well, the name of the band, Rob, is a play on or a compliment to the Walton Fete or Fete. I don't know how you exactly.
Yeah,
right?
Fate, Woolton Fate. The great thing was, I say, we're trying to do the same stuff as them in the same way. The same drummer, Colin, who played on the day. Yeah. We got like check shirts on as well, like they had on the day. Even tried to make some of the same mistakes that they made, for instance, because they didn't really know the words to the songs, because they'd got no means of writing down the words other than like trying to scribble them down when the song's on the radio, and that probably wouldn't have been that often. So some of the same mistakes, and it was great to be able to, when I was saying something about what happened back in the day, to turn around to Colin and say, "That's what happened, isn't it, Colin?" And he said, "Yeah, that's it, Rob." how many times have you been able to do that and say, right, this guy was there and he's playing with us. He can confirm that's what happened. Yeah.
Right.
So it was good.
Are you burnt out on it? Oh, go ahead, Rob.
It was a great place to sing because it's like a church hall. So although we didn't have any fancy modern amplification at all, and from an audience's point of view, it would have been as rough and ready as it was on the day, because it wasn't loud, because we weren't using really any equipment. But because of that, it was a great place to sing because there's such a high roof and your voice just echoes around the hall. Wow. Because it's not drowned out by sort of massive guitar solos or anything like that. But we had two drummers, which you would have thought would have been a nightmare. But it was fine. It was fine. That's
What kit was Colin playing? Was Colin playing his vintage kit, or was he?
Yeah, there's a video of it. At least we obviously recorded it in an audio way, but we did videos of it as well. So there's some on YouTube. But he was playing his authentic Quarryman kit. So two kits were great. You had the Wooltone kit with our sort of logo on the front of it, and then the Quarryman kit right next to it. It was good.
Very cool. Colin
had a great time. I think because there was two drummers, it took a bit of the onus off him, and he had a good time doing that. It was good. It was that real sort of backbeat kind of thing, Right. It was nice. Right. Yeah.
So, Rob, are you burned out on all this fab talk, or do you have time for a couple more fab questions?
No, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I think whenever any musos get together, I mean, many times we've commented on this, you inevitably end up talking about the Beatles at some stage of the evening anyway. So that's kind of what we do, isn't it? Really.
Right.
So have you been to like Mendips and Forthland Road and
yeah, have you been to those?
No, that's on my
bucket list.
That's on my bucket list. On our bucket
it's
list.
Even better than what you would think. It's to be in it. For one thing, Paul McCartney hadn't even been back in his house. He's been very recently with a guy that we've managed to offload onto you, Jamie Curtin.
Yep.
It was actually a great show, but yeah, that was the first time he'd been back, which must have really been strange for him.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's strange.
Well, everything's going to be the way it was. Yeah.
You what? Sorry.
Oh, I just said, like, I think they've got it like it's a national trust house. So
yes, they have.
Is that right? And everything, like they've got the period pieces in there and everything.
But I mean, it's strange for any of us to go back to where we lived, however many years ago, 50 years ago, or 60 years ago, however long ago it was. But for him, with all the memories he would have, and his mother dying, and like all the times that him, George, and John were like writing stuff and playing stuff, it must be, in a way, I suppose you can understand why he was so loath to go back. And also, of course, he was probably worried about it being like a circus, really, and media circus. But no, they're great. I mean, the thing about the two houses is Paul McCartney's is so quite a sort of basic working class kind of place, quite, and especially I think when the mother died, it was almost just like a rehearsal space.
Yeah.
Nothing much there at all, other than. And on that subject, I do think McCartney's dad must have a massive role in the Beatles' success, because he gave them this space to rehearse, dealt with all the complaints from the neighbors, protected them from all other kinds of stuff. And whenever they had a problem, like when they came back from Hamburg, and probably a lot of bands would have split up, because they had this space to go back to and the encouragement of McCartney's dad. I think that must have been really, really important to them.
So you're right with that.
Yeah.
Not to mention his dad, being the jazz pianist.
Yeah, telling him all the chords and whatever that he then put to such good use. Yeah. But and the Lennon house is more like a middle class, like a nice place, nice garden, nice place to grow up in. Lovely house. So that's to go in his bedroom, and it's quite amazing, really. Well, to stand in the sort of porch, I don't know if you would call it that, or the hallway, which is surrounded by glass, so it's quite a reverb type space where they used to sing, to get something like a slap back on the voices, to stand in there. It's heady stuff. To go to those two houses is even better than what you would have thought. I mean, you'd think it would be great, and it's like even better than that.
Wow.
Another one that's great is the Casbah, which was run by Mona Best, Pete Best's mother.
Yeah.
I mean, she was an amazing lady. She's well ahead of her time in terms of being a businesswoman, and
very independent. Yeah. And I've talked to Pete on a couple of different occasions. Very down to earth, very nice guy. Just a nice guy. And Rogue's opened his brother Rogue's opened that new Beatles Museum there. What's it called? I don't even remember. Do you know?
Good question. It's Liverpool Beatles Museum. I'm not sure. I've been in it, and I still can't remember what it's called. I can't give you the exact name, but it's on the main, the Matthew Street, which is the ground zero in the Beatle world kind of thing. But yeah, that is by far the best Beatle museum, because he has access to a lot of stuff that is genuinely being given by one of the band to someone else, so it's like completely authentic. They've got sort of original gear there, and it's great that by far the best Beatle museum, that one. And
Greg,
also
Rogue is Pete's half brother. Rogue's dad is Neil Aspinall.
Exactly.
Beatles manager for quite a long time.
Yeah, he's a fantastic.
Not manager,
yeah, he's a fantastic guide as well. Quite often he's involved in taking you around, especially when we went to the Casbah, which was the house that was done up as a sort of club, really, and where the Beatles did all the decorations on the walls, which are still there, and where they played a lot. Sometimes with Colin, the drummer that we were fortunate to play with. But that's a fantastic place as well, because it's perfectly preserved. Obviously, the original cavern has been knocked down, and there's a sort of facsimile which is very close to it and uses some of the same materials, and you can argue that it's not much is lost, which is possibly true, depends on your opinion, really. But the Casbah is 100% authentic. And the Beatle Museum in Matthew Street is very authentic as well, because it's stuff that's literally been given by the four mop tops to other people, and it's great.
Now, Rob, have you and the Wooltones been able to play the Cavern? Have you played the Cavern before?
Yeah, a few times. We normally play at something called the International Pop Overthrow Festival, run by a guy called David Bash. So that normally happens every year. Of course, this year it didn't happen because of COVID, but that's in the Cavern. That's a great thing, because although it's in Liverpool, which has got quite a dominant personality, anything that happens in Liverpool, people come to that from all over the world, and a lot of bands come from all over the world to play there, and they are absolutely ecstatic to be playing in the Cavern.
Sure.
So it's got a really nice kind of flavor to it. It's different from the run of the mill kind of thing that goes on. It's got a tiny bit more innocence and joy than some of the events that you get involved in.
Right.
Yeah, because there's such enthusiasm from so many people for the event. And a lot
Now,
of people.
Rob, would you please stay in touch if that goes on next year? I don't know about this year, but next year, please let us know. I mean, because I would love to come. It sounds a little like Cave Stomp, which is kind of the thing they have in New York for a lot of the garage kind of things they do.
Actually, David Bash runs these international pop overthrow events all over all over Europe and America. So there's certainly ones in New York, Los Angeles, and other parts of America, and in Europe. It's arguable whether the Liverpool one has got a very unique flavour. I don't know because I haven't been to the other ones. But as the fact that it's in the Cavern is quite a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Rob, any plans for you and the Wooltones to come over here to the States and do a tour?
Not
now, of course.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't before COVID, and I suppose there's less chance after that. There would need to be something. Something would need to fall into place that hasn't fallen into place, place yet. Anyway, so I don't know how that would happen. It'd be a great thing to do, of course, but so far it's not really come up as an
love to see you guys live. I mean, I love it. Two Lane Blacktop. I want to ask you about the single Two Lane Blacktop. Was that taken from the movie, the old James Taylor movie, or not?
Well, I've been fortunate enough of, although we've not been able to do any touring around America. I've been to America a few times, not just when I went to Nashville, but on like driving holidays. And one of them we drove from the East Coast to the West Coast, and we've done all kinds, thousands upon thousands of miles in America. So at some stage, I just thought, Two Lane Blacktop, that would be a good title for a song. And I did know there'd been a film. But the title sort of came to me just on one of these endless trips because there's not much else to do. So I always say you were driving along, and then I'd say to Tricia, my partner, could you just store this on your phone or write this down? And when we get back, there's a list of all these sorts of things. So there's a few songs that come from that kind of thing, really. But I have seen the film back in the day, but I haven't seen it recently. But I just thought it was a good title.
Oh yeah, it's a great title.
Your titles are
a great story to go with it too.
Amazing.
I think my favorite title is The Lost and Forgotten People of Barb. We invented a whole kind of story behind that they were like a lost civilization that lived on. There's an island near to Liverpool called Hilbury Island in the excuse my ignorance, it's either the Mersey estuary or the Dee estuary, probably the Dee estuary anyway. And we invented this story that there'd been druids and like a lost civilization living on this little island, Hilbury Island, and did a video along that kind of line.
That's very cool.
And then we did badges as well, of course, called The Badge of Barb. And the badge is spelled B-double-A, like in Barb. So,
okay.
The Badge of Barb. Based on the original Barbic texts or whatever, Barbic runes. So, you can go to town with a lot of that kind of stuff.
I like that.
As far as being able to find your stuff, Bandcamp, YouTube, is there a direct website that you'd like our listeners to go to?
Yeah, there was one website, and we've replaced that with an even better website now. So Rob Clarke and the Wooltones.co.uk or robclarkeandthewooltones.com gives you a lot of Wooltone related stuff. And there's also some stuff about my sort of solo stuff or going to Nashville. And then this country thing I referred to earlier, Rob Clarke with the Brown Bears. But certainly for anyone who's interested in the Wooltones, it's a hive of Wooltone related material. And point you to the other places like Bandcamp and all these sorts of places.
Well, Rob, before we get out of here, I want to be sure and ask you to give Craig your contact information, because when we get to Liverpool, we're going to be going, Rob, hey, remember me?
Well, I'd be glad to take you around some of the places. There's a lot. I mean, there was a guy here that was very big over here called Billy Fury in the sort of early 60s. There's a fantastic statue of him. That was that song we did, Statue at the Pierhead. Like a really kind of active vital kind of statue rather than some of the ones that you see that are kind of stone.
Right.
This one, it's like he's poised. He's
Oh,
right
wow.
in the middle
Rocket.
of. It's a fantastic statue. Yeah, there's just loads of stuff like that in Liverpool. It's what I mean. I have been fortunate to visit a lot of places, and particularly in America and Europe and India and whatever. And Liverpool is certainly one of the best places on the planet, I think. It's great for musicians. It's relatively cheaper to live in than some places I could mention. And
London.
famous, yes, for one thing, or Los Angeles, or
Right.
and you've got the humor and warmth of the people. But it's a fantastic place. You've got all this culture. You've got two fantastic football teams. You have football rather than yours. You got all this Beatle thing, and all kinds of great bands have come out of Liverpool.
Sure.
Big Irish kind of influence. In fact, I did a film a few years ago that was really when I was going around all these folk clubs and acoustic stuff, acoustic kind of gigs, called North to West. That's a bit about that, Liverpool, and how to trying to make it in music in Liverpool. That's kind of before the Wooltones came along. But
is that on YouTube, Rob?
It is actually, yes, it is. Yeah, I could always send you a link to that. Rob Clarke, North to West. So yeah, I was sufficiently enthused about Liverpool to make a film about it. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, Rob, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for the time. I certainly appreciate it. Thanks for being in the garage with us. We never leave.
Thanks to you both, and
We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's good that your garage is as usefully kind of employed as mine.
Right.
Not just a garage, is it?
Yours makes much better music than ours, though. But
Yes.
Well, no. I like to hear the two drum kits going together. Yeah, no.
Now, Rob,
great.
before we go, I do want to ask, we're a bit of a gearhead. So what kind of guitars you play, anything like that? Do you have any vintage instruments you use?
Yeah, the Wooltones guitar is just a Telecaster, Mexico Telecaster. That's the Wooltones guitar. More recently, I've used a Gretsch, was it 6120, like the old Buffalo Springfield orange one. I mean, that's a lovely guitar.
Wow.
But yeah, I do like the Telecaster, and I've got an old 1930s Gibson. That is quite the mind boggles really to think who's had that and what they've done with it, because whenever you pick it up, you get this real kind of bluesy type vibe off it. So I don't know who's had it, but it's quite an amazing.
In the headstock, Rob, does it have the Gibson and script writing inlaid?
It was the original headstock, so yeah, it's got Gibson on it. So yeah.
My dad had an old 30s Gibson, and it had it was like in a script writing, it said D Gibson at the very top of the head.
Yeah, this is more like the current sort of Gibson design, I would say. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then I've got a 70s Gibson as well. That's nice. And then a little Martin that I like, an auditorium one. Is it 00016? They're good. And then it's
what kind of amp?
Well, yeah, you get onto controversial territory with this, because obviously it's meant you're meant to use a valve amp, aren't you? For 99% of the Wooltone stuff, I use an old Sessionette 75, which works particularly well with Fenders, even though it is transistor. But it doesn't particularly sound transistor. But I've got now a Fender Princeton, which it's okay as well. But yeah, it's an interesting one, all of that, isn't it? Because once you've recorded your guitar, it's going to be treated in so many ways, even for something as kind of artless as what we're doing. It's going to have to go through a computer a couple of times and then end up being listened to on a computer. So other than the kick that you do or don't get from playing with a valve amp, I don't know at the end of the day whether it's such a big deal or not. But I've got a valve amp and a transistor amp, and it's horses for courses, really. But I did have a deluxe reverb for a while, but it's fantastic sound, but it was very heavy. I kind of thought this is going to be a bit heavy for me to lug around gigs.
Sure.
So
They weigh a ton. Yes. Yeah.
incredibly loud. I need something that's kind of quiet enough for me to be able to sing on top of it. I mean, that's the thing, really. I'm primarily a singer, so it's not as if I'm Jimi Hendrix, you know. I'm essentially a singer-songwriter, so the guitar, I need something that doesn't interfere too much with the vocal, so something that gives me enough to feed off at a low volume when I'm recording, at least, anyway. So that might be I think part of the reason I've ended up using a sessionette a lot, because it's not, obviously Fenders are great for projecting, aren't they? And valve amps, they project all over the place. And sessionette, it just sort of points it in a little direction. I can point it towards the wall and kind of get on with the session kind of thing.
Sure.
So we've got an old drum kit that I traveled miles, not a long distance in your terms, but in British terms, like 300 miles or whatever to buy this drum kit for a pittance. It's predates rock and roll. You know, it was used in like a ladies' jazz band in the 50s.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
So it's like a little jazz kit.
2012, 14, most likely. Size bass, 12-inch tom, 14 floors.
Yeah, a tiny bass drum, which again was the reason for wanting something like that. I wanted something that was authentic. This thing has got the original heads on, I'm convinced.
Wow!
Because it's never really been hit very hard.
Sure.
So yeah, we use that again because we're recording in a tight space. We don't really need anything that projects a lot or is very loud. But yeah, basically, so all the stuff is recorded on a 60 quid drum kit. That's what I paid for.
Wow, that's awesome.
You know what kind of make it is? Can you remember, Rob? Ludwig, Slingerland, Gretsch, Premier?
I think it's Beverly.
Beverly, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There was another make I was trying to guess at the time. Was it Atlas? Is that
Yeah, Atlas. Yeah, yep.
That's what I was trying to get. Couldn't really find one of them, so just got one of these.
That's cool.
That's a trick.
I hope it is a Beverly, but it's something like that. It's from that sort of Premier type family anyway, I think. But yeah, there's one of the things I do like about it that I think more recently the cymbals are a lot more fizzy, aren't they? They slightly thinner sound, more of a hi-fi sound. I think the old 50s, 60s cymbals, they're thicker, aren't they? Which you can hear on the old records. I like that. I like the character of them. So they're saying the ride cymbal. It's kind of a thicker kind of sound, you know.
Yeah, more goes through. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that.
Well, everything you're using, it works because we like the sound. So
yeah. I would often debate whether to kind of up the so-called quality element of it, but you're not really guaranteed to get as good a take doing it that way. So who knows?
Exactly. If it works, it works. You know?
Yeah.
Well, Rob, thank you again for giving us your time. Now, if possible, in another maybe month or two, we'd like to check back in with you for another segment. Just see how things are going.
Yeah. Segment 2. Yeah.
That's right.
That's good. Yeah.
We appreciate you coming on.
No, and it's good. Good. I've enjoyed talking to you both, and it's good for you to ask me. It's good.
All right, Rob. Well, take care, man. Thanks for hanging out
again.
with us.
We'll see you. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to you both. See you then.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye. See ya.